Well, it's time now to get a look at our weather forecast for the week ahead. And joining us now to discuss, we bring in our good friend Eric Snodgrass with Nutrien. And Eric, always good to catch up with you, sir. And hope you're doing well. I think you and I both recovered after that Super Bowl game on Sunday night.
I was up early, running around, getting these forecasts done, just like you were up getting all your shows figured out. So yeah, it was. It's one of those where I really kind of wish I could take a day off. Right? I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna chill out on Monday. It doesn't work in this industry.
No, somebody needs to start the petition to have the day after the Super Bowl off.
Holiday,
In my opinion, make it a holiday. Why not?
yeah, right?
But no, to your point, the weather doesn't stop, and you're always watching what's going on with the weather. And I know this week ahead going to be a fairly active one. It's sounding like we got some systems, some snow up north. We got some severe weather down to the south. Walk us through what you're seeing for this week ahead.
Yeah, the next 10 days we've got three big lows coming off the Rocky Mountains. Two of them are going to be what we call Colorado lows, but the first one's coming out of Texas later on today. So that system dipping out of Texas is going to make things very windy down there, but there's going to be some snow in parts of Colorado and Kansas coming up behind it. It does have the risk of putting down some snow in the upper Midwest, like the Red River Valley of the North. And all the while, this is all churning through the midsection of the country. The West just stays pretty well tumultuous. I don't know if that's a better way to say it, but the Western United States sees multiple systems diving in. So, long story short, whenever the atmosphere sets up with a bunch of cold west and a bunch of warmth east, everything is going to be active. And that's what we're going to be seeing. So, you're right. The second low, the second one coming out, which comes out later this week, it's got the snow potential from Colorado to Michigan. It's got the severe weather potential for the Mid-South on Wednesday. Then from, honestly, the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley down to the Southeast on Thursday got chances for strong to severe storms. And that's the second one. We go into a little lull over the weekend, and then next week we've got another big one. Comes right out of Colorado again, dips south, heads straight toward the Great Lakes. And that seems to be the stay of it. So there's good to this, all right? The good is we're putting moisture down on top of an area that we've been talking about as having subsurface soil moisture problems. That's great. We're putting moisture down in the plains, areas that desperately need to get it. That's also a good thing. So while it's uncomfortable, it's actually excellent setting us up for what's coming up this spring. And the temperature pattern, I mean, we might have places in Ohio this week that touch mid 60s and then are followed late in the week by highs that are going to be struggling to get out of the upper 20s. So yeah, it's welcome to late winter, early spring. We live in the mid latitudes and it gets exciting.
Well, you mentioned the temperatures, and you mentioned as we get into spring as well. And we've had a fairly mild winter so far. What is that temperature outlook looking like here as we turn our attention maybe towards March and start looking at spring? And then what's that precipitation outlook looking like as well as we get into spring?
Yeah, well, right now there's a bit of a competition between two big features happening across North America. There's a big ridge over the southeast. That's what's kept the east so warm this winter. And then there's been this shift coming out of Siberia and across the Arctic to set up some cold air that's going to invade Canada. And it'll get all the way into the northern plains. It'll get all the way into the western United States over the next 10 to 15 days. But the question is, who's going to win the battle for the midsection of the country, for the South, for the Mid-South, where we live. And I think it's going to be this kind of jockeying for position, which is why when we look out there to the end of this month and start of March, we think we'll be tucked away in that. So any farther north you go, you're going to see some really cold temperatures. And if you stay south, you're going to be like, well, where's winter? It's just been spring forever. And that's going to be, I think, the case going forward. But again, that contrast sets us up for good February, again, into March precipitation. And I like it. We've got to get rid of these major underlying drought issues to have some success in 2023. So volatile late winter and early springs tend to give us, we're thankful for it once it gets into July. So I think that's going to be the top thing I'm watching out for. So don't get settled on any one way that the atmosphere is going to behave, because it'll change tomorrow, guaranteed.
Well, thinking about this as well, how does La Nina play into this whole picture? I know we've been talking maybe La Nina diminishing, going away, maybe switching to an El Nino pattern. What's the latest there?
Yeah, so La Nina right now, we could almost make an argument that it's the behavior of it's out. I mean, it's just not even there in the trade winds anymore, and that's where it all starts. So if that piece of this is out, then what that means is other sub-seasonal things take over. What I'm most interested in is if the MJO is going to dominate. So if the MJO moves out of the Pacific, okay, what that typically means is very active U.S. weather. That's the easiest way to put it. La Nina, all the long range forecasts suggest we'll be INSO neutral from now all the way to the start of summer. And then we'll be talking mid to late summer about the potential transition to El Nino. And then in the fall and winter, it looks as though we're going to possibly have a full El Nino going. So what does that mean? That means that next winter, and it's crazy to think out that far, but next winter has a better chance of being more mild and very wet across the whole country. So next winter could be a real drought, long-term drought busting kind of winter if everything I just told you plays out. In the meantime, we have a growing season. Don't forget, I just skipped over 7 months, which is most important for you and I. And I like the transition overall. It's a good signal to just eliminate one of the major drought factors in the United States, getting rid of that La Nina.
Eric, catch us up at South America. I know very hot temperatures in Argentina and dry last week. What's the
Yeah.
latest in Argentina and in Brazil as well?
Well, Argentina is going to stay drier than normal. Some of the rains that were predicted to happen this weekend and then early this week are showing up a little bit less than I think what we anticipated for certain growing areas. But the heat is gone after today. So there's going to be some much cooler air coming in there. Brazil has got an interesting problem right now. Harvest, you've seen the latest harvest numbers out of Mato Grosso. They caught up a little bit back up to the 5-year average. But south of there, central Brazil has been extremely wet. I called a friend of mine that works down there for us at Nutrien. His name is Erico. So it's kind of fun. We almost share the same name. And I said, hey, just tell me, what are things like? He's in Goiás. He goes, it's the wettest I can remember. He says, right now the crop's full, so we're taking it. It's okay. But he goes, if this doesn't stop, when we start to harvest, we got to get this crop out of here. Less than ideal harvest conditions. So possibly big yields with maybe some quality issues. That's going to be something to think about there because the next 15 days look very wet for central Brazil. So it's a bit complicated in South America as well. But overall, we have to say much of Brazil had the water needed to make a massive crop, while Argentina kind of paid the price for that.
Eric, real quick before we run out of time, anything else you're watching around the world here when it comes to weather this week?
Yeah, I like to watch what happens in Australia. We have business down there, so I look at it quite a bit. And there's a big tropical cyclone going toward New Zealand. Okay, so this, of course, would be east of Australia. And remember, New Zealand was hammered about, 15, 20 days ago with record flooding. And so they're about to get hit again really hard here. So what do we think about there? There's a lot of cattle, a lot of dairy in New Zealand. And so this could be quite impactful for that industry.
Well, you can sign up for Eric's daily weather newsletter on our website, markettalkag.com. With that, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien, thanks for joining us. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. You too.